We have Dr. Anand Ranganathan, who's an author, Aina Tanjan joining us from Beijing. We have Ambassador Sajjan Har to talk more about in terms of whether or not we should actually now be doubling down on some of the retaliatory tariffs we took the last time around. And we have Mr. Raymond Vickery to give us a sense of what is it the Trump administration is really thinking right now, given the fact that the American consumer would be paying for all of it. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for taking out the time to join us on India Matters. Dr. Ranganathan, let me start with you, sir, in terms of we put a lot of context, or at least we're trying to put context to what Donald Trump is doing here. He wakes up and he says another, outlandish figure and adds up to whatever number he had earlier thought of in terms of tariffs. What do you think should be India's response and answer from here on?
Good evening, Gaurie, and good evening to my fellow panelists. At the outset, I must say that I speak here purely as a layman. There are enough experts on the panel. Look, as to the question that you asked, the fact is, at least I believe, we don't need to manage Trump. We just need to manage our books, and Trump will get managed automatically. Here are 5 things that we must do immediately. Number 1, we must negotiate, not with the USA, but with Russia, for an increase in the current discount of 7% that we are getting on Russian oil. In fact, if we get the kind of discounts for the next year that we were getting from Russia 2 years ago, 24 to 30%, we would have totally offset the hit that we are expecting through these 50% Trump tariffs slated to be 0.3% of the GDP by Goldman Sachs. This is the simplest and the easiest way to counter these unjust tariffs. Number 2, we must impose reciprocal tariffs on the USA. The bully must be shown the mirror and his hypocrisy in punishing us for buying Russian oil that he and his European chums continue to buy and were 2 years ago imploring us to buy so as to stabilize world oil prices. China immediately imposed reciprocal tariffs the moment Trump did and kept on increasing them incrementally till such time Trump relented and decreased them from 150% to 35%. Number 3, we must impose 2% tariff and call it blood tariff on the EU and the USA as they are financing the brutal war in Ukraine, where emotions and people are running high and people are being killed just because the EU continues to buy 3 million tons of Russian iron and nickel, 18 million tons of Russian LNG, 8 million tons of Russian oil, and the USA continues to buy 3.5 million tons of Russian fertilizers, 435 tons of Russian uranium, and 1.1 million tons of Russian oil refined by India. And if Trump says we are only buying a fraction of the Russian oil of what India is, well, remind him of the morality and first principle and tell him that this is akin to Bill Gates saying, I only went to the Epstein Island twice, whereas Bill Clinton went 20 times. Number 4, we must increase our imports of Russian oil from the current 32% of our total oil imports. Look, India has saved 2.21 lakh crores or $26.35 billion in the last 3 years through buying Russian oil instead of Saudi oil. Had it not, our inflation would have increased cumulatively by 1.47% over what it has been the last 3 years. And for all those who ask, why has all this money saved not been passed on directly to consumers? Well, it is embarrassing to explain to them that no government, Congress or BJP, ever does that through the petroleum sector. Even when oil prices come down because the sector finances government schemes, it's a cash cow. The money earned and saved by the government in this sector goes into a kitty that is then dipped into every time it needs to give hundreds of billions of dollars worth of welfare. Number 5, and this is important, just 30 seconds. We need to sit back and watch the bully fuss and fidget. We can follow him in like a ton of bricks, pun intended. By bricks, I mean BRICS, all of whose constituent nations have been antagonized by Trump. In fact, Brazil has suggested we move away from the dollar completely. I like the fact that PM Modi is visiting China and Gaurie Dwivedi is currently in Russia. Perhaps we should think of taxing US digital economy and big tech. Remember, Trump tariffs affect only 5% of our total annual exports of 830 billion. Still, a message needs to be given, and soon. We need to hold the bully by his short and curlies if we can't yet kick him in the unmentionables. We need to teach the bully a lesson, because a lesson not taught is a lesson not learned.
That's a lot of important points you've put out, Dr. Ranganathan. But I agree on the fact that at the end of the day, India did slap those retaliatory tariffs last time around. In Donald Trump's first tenure, he had the same playbook. He said, I'm going to start with steel. Then he went on to aluminium. Then it was the generalized system of the preferential treatment that he had. India responded. He said, we're also going to impose retaliatory tariffs on 28 items. And it ended finally when the two sides agreed to bring the tariffs down simultaneously. Raymond Vickery, that's the only model that Donald Trump and his administration understand. So India needs to probably look at that.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I think that you must step back and look at the importance of the U.S.-India relations. These are the two largest and I would argue greatest democracies in the world, and our values are in line. And the relationship is much larger than Donald Trump. And so the question is how now to go forward. Peace and prosperity must be waged together, and they cannot be destroyed simply by one man. And in that regard, it is important to understand that domestically here, Trump may not even have the legal authority to do what he's doing in regard to reciprocal tariffs. The court for the Federal Circuit is now considering the matter and will issue a ruling which doubtlessly will go to the Supreme Court, but may negate this so-called reciprocal tariff in its entirety. In addition, it has to be understood that Donald Trump thrives on the model of the real estate developer, and that is transaction rather than a relationship. This is not going to work in the long run, but his stock and trade has been
so
to
the long
create...
run here is 3.5 years. That's the long run that we are talking about. And in that time, if this is how Donald Trump is going to go about in terms of the India-US relationship, then what is it that we are really looking at 3.5 years down the line? And the sense that one gets in New Delhi is that probably this is the reason why we've been all along wary about America. The fact that 1971 is still fresh in people's memory in New Delhi is because of this fact that America inherently brings with it mistrust. We are still talking about 1971, how America supported Pakistan simply because there is a history with many people in New Delhi feeling that that's the reason why we cannot trust America. Raymond Vickery?
Well, if you want to talk about who can trust who, well, let's go back to 1962 when China invaded India, and the United States provided help to India, and Russia stood aside and took the Chinese position. We have to get over the old-time religion, if you will, that somehow the West is trying to colonialize India. That is part of history. The way to look at this is what is in Indian interest and the world interest going forward. And it is certainly true.
I don't think, sir, I don't think it is about West looking to colonize India. It's none of that. India is now a far bigger entity. In fact, it is where the growth engine is. People are talking about what leverage India has. Well, India is the only one that has leverage. We are the ones which are the fastest growing economy here. And at the end of the day, US needs to have a trade deal with us. I'm going to come to that in a bit. Dr. Ranganathan has a point to make. Then I get in the other two panelists. Yes.
No, very quickly about the previous panelist who said, while I agree with him, I think as far as trust is concerned, let's be honest, every nation is out there on his or her own. I mean, I would trust Trump as much as I would trust Dracula to keep his mouth shut at a blood donation camp. What is it that Kissinger, the old rogue, said? To have America as an enemy is dangerous, but to have America as a friend is downright fatal. And that's absolutely true. I want to bring his attention to the fact that 25% ad valorem taxes, tariffs have been imposed on Russia on India for buying Russian oil, even as Europe is buying 8 million tons of the same Russian oil, even as China is buying 100 million tons of the same Russian oil. Is that not, I don't want to use our word racism, but why has Europe not been levied the taxes? Will the ambassador please explain that?
Go ahead, Mr. Vickery, explain that, and then we get in the other two panelists.
I think, you have to look at what happened. India was importing virtually no Russian oil up until the invasion of Ukraine. And then other nations, particularly in Europe, cut back, and they've cut back very significantly. And what's happened is India has taken up the slack and enabled this to go forward. Now, I don't say that anybody ought to tell India who it can deal with, but India's values and interests are not with Russia.
Again, sir, nobody is there to tell that. Nobody is there to tell New Delhi in terms of where our interests are best served, where our interests are best protected. That's a sovereign decision that only we decide. Nobody else goes about lecturing us on that. Let's be very clear about it. Let's be absolutely clear about it. And let's now get in Ambassador Sajjanhar as well as Aina Tangent on this. Ambassador Sajjanhar, now the fact is we've spoken about retaliatory tariffs. We've spoken about the double speak. That's now very clear. But the fact is that the sense one gets is that this is probably the only way that Donald Trump and his administration realize that unless and until there is a retaliatory tariff, unless and until we go down the same tariff war path, we will not be able to ensure that we have, let's say, a meeting of minds, so to say, to bring this down together. It's a trade war in which India needs to engage in.
Well, thank you very much, Gaurie, for having me on your show. And, you've been having a fascinating conversation. And I have my own views as far as, what both the panelists have said, but I will not. I'll just mention one point. I think what Mr. Dwivedi says that, trying to justify the tariffs on India because it is buying Russian oil, I think it is totally indefensible. As the Indian government has stated very categorically, it is unreasonable, it is unjustified, and it is highly unfortunate. I agree with Mr. Dwivedi that India and the United States, there is a huge convergence of interest. There is a huge convergence of values. There was convergence of values even till 2000, till Mr. Clinton came to India. But those values did not help us really. We had the worst sanctions put on us in 1998 when we had the nuclear explosion. I'm not going back to 1971, Gaurie, because you've already mentioned about it, but 1998 also. We had the biggest sanctions that were imposed on us at that time, because we have two nuclear weapon states on our borders, both hostile to us, China as well as Pakistan. And we had to make sure that we protect ourselves. That having been said, I think the world today, I agree with him, it's very different. World today is, we have a convergence of interest in a variety of ways, in the bilateral context as also in the geopolitical context. But it is not only India's responsibility to be mindful to protect those interests. I think it is the responsibility more of the United States. Since the United States is a bigger power, it's a bigger country, it's the responsibility, greater responsibility devolves upon it. Now, if the United States is taking the India account, the India relationship, tearing it into shreds and throwing it to the dustbin, you shouldn't really expect that we'll happily agree to be thrown into the dustbin. Now, this brings me to respond to your question, Gaurie. Last time you mentioned 28 products against which we had imposed tariffs. That's right. What was the value? 240 million. It was a pittance. And, we kept on saying that we are going to impose these tariffs. We would sort of, publish them on a paper and sort of, show them around. But we kept on postponing the imposition of the tariff till we did it much later. But, the tariffs on, as far as aluminium, steel, GSP, the generalized system of preferences,
yes,
none of that was taken back. They are still applicable as far as Indian exports to the United States are concerned.
Right.
We don't get GSP. What we need to do right now is we have said.
No, I was talking more in terms of intent. I was saying more in terms of showing intent. That was the idea.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you, Gaurie. I don't dispute what you're saying, but I'm trying to build on that. We have said the right thing. What the Ministry of External Affairs, statements that have come out yesterday, statement that came out on the 4th, what the Prime Minister has said, that India is not going. These are red lines. The United States should know that if it professes to be a friend, if it should understand these are red lines. They cannot be crossed. But right now, the we have to walk the talk. We have to convert our statements into actions. And that is by taking much more stringent action against the US imports, because, we just cannot lie down and allow Mr. Trump to walk over us. We
Absolutely
have to stand
not.
up.
And I don't think that has happened.
More capable economy.
Right.
Much
I don't think that
bigger
has
economy
happened.
today.
And I'm going to talk about India's red lines as well and the trade deal, why that could really be the major reason why Donald Trump is coming out with these fresh set of tantrums. But I want to get in an Aina Tangent as well on this. Mr. Tangent, the view now as far as, you're going to give us the view from Beijing, so to say, in the fact that there is now a growing consensus, for want of a better word, that there could potentially actually be de-dollarization. For our viewers, to put it very simply, the fact that a lot of American economy's real power lies because American dollar is the one that is the backbone of the world economy. That could potentially change with India and China deciding that, these tariffs are enough, we've got to now start trading in our own currencies. Could that really be the big game changer? Aina Tangent.
Well, that's part of it. I would point out that with India and the BRICS, this could be very, very powerful. Donald Trump is always in the position where he says America is the most powerful nation. If you put the BRICS together, it's 40% of the world's GDP. It's the majority of it's larger than the US in manufacturing by far. It is also has most land, most resources, most population. If it goes to the United States as a group, 10 members, and says, listen, enough of this nonsense. You are not the ruler of our countries. We are not going to allow your capital to make decisions about our economies and how much we should pay. So if that happens, it would be a game changer. Eventually, of course, there is going to be changes already afoot. Many nations were concerned about the weaponization of SWIFT, about preaching values but not practicing in terms of the WHO, where the US has not allowed any appellate judges and therefore made it basically a neutered organization.
Okay.
And also in terms of other UN things. So I think India has a number of options. And there are two basic ideas about the world that are going forward. The US idea is that we'll tell you what to do and you like it, and we'll extract value from you, e.g. it's the playground bully taking everyone's lunch money. Or there's an alternate one. This is the third world global south, where they say, look, we are tired of a unipolar world. We want a multipolar world. We want to be respected. We want to be secure, and we want to have a path to development.
Yes.
The question is, which way should countries go?
Indeed, and I think that's going to really decide the future of world trade as well as future of America under Donald Trump. And in fact, gentlemen, hold your thought, because I want to now quickly talk about the tariff truth in terms of what really are the exact tariffs that exist right now, apart from all the noise and the tantrums that Donald Trump is putting out. Let's put out the exact numbers that actually exist for the tariff. This is the simple average tariffs that exist for India, Bangladesh, Turkey and Argentina for agriculture and non-agriculture. You can see that they are broadly on the same parity. This is what the numbers actually say. 16, 14, 16 and 13%. This is the broad range in which these tariffs actually exist. And now the weighted average tariff for India is actually 4.6%. So as I said, there is a huge amount of noise that comes in from Trump administration, but this is the number that you need to keep in mind and now put everything that Donald Trump has said into context. This is the weighted average number that is there, and now see what Donald Trump has been doing. Let's now quickly also talk about the other big claim that Donald Trump made, which was about whether or not India is a dead economy. And what is extremely disappointing is people here in India actually chose to support Donald Trump rather than the facts that we're going to put out right now. First and foremost, Donald Trump made a claim that India is actually a dead economy. And then he went on to say that we do very little business with India. Let's get you the facts here, viewers. Now, the facts that exist right now in terms of the trade This is $131 billion is the trade that actually happens between India and US. India's exports to the US are a little over $86 billion, and this is the kind of growth that they are seeing, double digits. In terms of last year, the exports was a little over $77.5 billion, and there is also now, in terms of US being India's #1 trading partner for 4 years in a row. This is the trading relationship that exists, and look at the kind of statements that Donald Trump was making. And the mission that exists is Mission 500, which is to actually increase this to $500 billion by 2030. As I said, it's important to see the facts here, and it's disappointing that there are some here who chose to actually support Donald Trump and his false claims as against the numbers that actually stand here. All right, let's go back to our discussion here. And Dr. Ranganathan, let me start with you here. The fact that at the end of the day, many people say that this is just, arm flexing being done simply because of the concessions that the US negotiators want, primarily for non-veg milk and genetically modified seeds. It comes down to that. Until they get that, they're actually doubling down on tariffs. Is that what it is?
Gaurie, let me expound on this, because the solution is a bit nuanced, if I may say so. There are two issues here, and people are conflating the two. One is, of course, the draconian nature of the extra tariffs on account of us buying Russian oil. That is completely unacceptable, because that is hypocritical. The other is an issue of tariffs. And here, if I may say, I'm afraid, jingoism should not enter the field of economics. And I fear that going forward, it just might across both countries, because ultimately, I believe it is a tragedy of our times that the socialist, populist, communist, opportunist opposition has forced Prime Minister Modi's hand into trumpeting protectionism. You say you want to protect our farmers, really? Have you even asked our farmers, real farmers, not the perennially protesting middlemen farmers or the non-tax paying farmer dynasties? Have you ever asked them, what is it that you want to protect? Primitive, labor-intensive, non-productive, pesticide-laced, rotting, rat-eaten agricultural produce, and you want to protect those practices? 44%, Gaurie, of our 600 million strong labor force is involved in agriculture, a sector that contributes only 14% to our GDP. In the West, it is 2% of labor force. Production to purchase, the entire chain is archaic, almost medieval. 70 million hectares of agricultural land has been damaged by floods and drought in India in the last 6 years.
Okay.
81% of farmers and croplands are not insured. 1 lakh Indian farmers have committed suicide in the last 10 years.
Yes.
35% of our agriculture is totally dependent. I can go on and on and on. But the fact is, this is not what
But the panacea to that is not agreeing to what the US negotiators want, Dr. Ranganathan. That's the point.
We need to first find out what exactly is it that they want. The fact of the matter is that even if you open the dairy sector, because it is on equal footing,
right,
and American dairy products are made by people who are getting 10 times the wages to what Indians are not going to buy the American produce. It's like pencil. If you have an equal quality pencil being made in India and imported from America, Indians won't buy the American pencil because it will be more expensive, because it takes 10 times more amount to make that pencil. So there is common sense that needs to be applied as far as India putting tariffs.
Raymond Vickery, respond to that. These are strong arm tactics that Donald Trump is doing.
Yes, they're strong arm tactics.
But India is very clear. Our Prime Minister has said that whatever may be the price, we are not going to relent when it comes to GM seeds and non-veg milk.
Yes, I agree with that. I think that Donald Trump has shown a total insensitive and lack of knowledge about what the Indian situation is, particularly in regard to dairy. I think that Donald Trump should not, though, be confused with what America is. America is not represented by Donald Trump. He won a very, very narrow victory in his presidential. He only has a 3-seat majority in the House of Representatives last night, and I fully expect both in Virginia, where I'm sitting right now, his candidate for governor will lose. And I think there will be a complete reversal in 2026 at the House of Representatives.
Right.
We've worked our way through problems in the past. Have devoted 30 years of my life to U.S.-India relations, and there are a lot of people on
And
both
you would be
sides.
disappointed how they're beginning to fall apart right now at
Yes,
some of
extremely
the very ad hoc measures that Trump administration is coming in there and doing. Ambassador Sajjanar, we've got to wrap this up. But my final question to you, which is that at the end of the day, you've got to look the bully in the eye. He wants you to relent. We're not going to relent. We're very clear about it. Let's wait a couple of quarters and let's see when these prices come back to start biting the American consumer. What is it that Donald Trump will then do?
Yeah, let's look at this. I think, to some extent, to a quite extent, I agree with Mr. Vikri. India-US partnership is a very important partnership. It is a consequential partnership, not only for India, but I think for security, prosperity in the world. We have to try to preserve it. But as far as Mr. Trump is concerned, Mr. Trump is not America. Mr. Trump does not represent all, and he's not going to be there for all time to come. We have to stare him in the eye. We have to stare him down. In the United States, he is known as decode. Trump always chickens out. Let's see, how long he can sort of, withstand all this. And that is why I said we have to take some tough measures, meaning they are not going to be measures that are going to be there in perpetuity. But I think we really have to push back against Mr. Trump. And when this team comes at the end of August, we have to negotiate with them, and we have to, I think we have told them our red lines. If there are some other issues, India needs energy. India was importing significant quantities of LNG from the United States during Trump 1.0 also.
Okay.
Whatever we need, we can increase our imports from the United States, see what is possible, and I think also tell the other side.
I think, sir, we've been very fair in terms of our negotiations, and the India-UK FTA proves just that we are going to enter into any trade deal only and only if it serves our interests. It protects our interests, ensures that we have a growth path.
That
only
has to be
then
the bottom
we will actually
line,
enter
Gaurie.
into a trade deal. And no amount of bullying by Donald Trump is going to make us relent. He can continue to dance on White House till then, but we are going to enter into a trade deal only when it suits us. I'm afraid I'm completely out of time. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me.